Hello there. Dr. Bill Crawford here, psychologist, speaker, author of 8 books, host of 2 PBS specials, here again to bring you another tip on how to help you create the life you want. Specifically, how to use my life from the top of the mind philosophy to bring more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do. Today, I want to talk about the concept of whether we should trust our comfort zone sometimes and why is self-care so hard? And it's from a quote that came across my desk from Juno Counseling. She calls herself Dr. Vassilia, and I think the reason for that is the last name is kind of hard to pronounce. So if you want to know where this really comes from, feel free to Google Juno Counseling and you'll find this on the web. I'm going to read this because it's really well written and it's a little bit longer than the quote, and I want to make sure I get it right. She says, when you're not used to being confident, confidence feels like arrogance. When you're used to being passive, assertiveness feels like aggression. When you're not used to getting your needs met, prioritizing yourself or taking care of yourself feels selfish. Your comfort zone is not always a good benchmark. And I ran this by some friends of mine and they went, yep, boy, do I resonate with that, because a lot of us grow up with this message that confidence gets us in trouble or blocks us getting the love we want from our parents. They tell us we need to be compliant. They tell us that taking care of ourselves before we take care of others is selfish, and we shouldn't do that. We should always take care of other people first, and if there's any left over, then we get it. They talk about how being assertive is often perceived as something that gets in the way of us, again, getting the love we want. And when we grow up with that particular perspective, that becomes our worldview. See, as we're growing up, our brain is developing, and it's creating kind of an image of what's the world we grow up in. And unfortunately, it doesn't really look at the world. It looks at our family and says, oh, okay, well, this is what the world must be. And most of that has to do with this middle brain. For those of you who follow my life from the top of the mind philosophy, I talk about 3 parts to the brain. Lower brain is called the brainstem. This is the fight or flight part. This is where our frustration, stress, annoyance, anger, resentment, self-doubt, confusion, anxiety comes from. Upper 80% of the brain, I call the top of the mind. That is the neocortex. This is where we have access to our interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, clarity, confidence, creativity, and where we make our best decisions. The middle brain, however, is the most interesting in the sense that it is called the limbic system. It is the scanner, processor, router part of the brain. It scans incoming data, whatever we perceive from our 5 senses or whatever thought happens to pop into our head. It scans it for, is this negative? And unfortunately, it's not very smart. So often it's misinterpreting anything negative as dangerous and throwing us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger, which is this lower brain. So if we grew up feeling or experiencing that confidence or assertiveness or taking care of ourselves first is dangerous, in other words, it may invoke some sort of a negative reaction from our parents or the people we look to for love and approval, or just blocks us getting the love we want, then the middle brain starts kind of seeing that as a worldview. And so we go into our adult life kind of feeling that confidence can feel like aggression and assertiveness can feel like arrogance and taking care of ourselves can feel selfish. However, my guess is if we were asking what would we recommend to someone we love, our kids, our best friend, someone we love, we would probably encourage them to be confident in who they are. We would encourage them to take care of themselves and make sure that they kind of get their needs met so they're just not waiting on everybody else to meet them for us. We would encourage them to be assertive versus aggressive so that they kind of feel good about what they're saying. When we're looking at what we would recommend to someone we love, I think we have clearer perspective because we're using love. Love comes from this upper 80% of the brain, not worry or fear or anxiety that comes from the lower brain as a benchmark, as a criteria for what we do and how we think. So if this resonates with you, if you kind of find yourself feeling sometimes when confidence feels dangerous or assertiveness feels dangerous or taking care of yourself feels selfish, just recognize that is something you learned growing up, not blaming anybody. Our parents were probably doing the best they could, but we learned some things we would probably not recommend to those we love. So we want to start living in a way that we would recommend to someone we love, and that begins to rewire the brain. That's a cool thing. You may have heard the concept of neuroplasticity. It means the brain is always rewiring itself. So as we start trusting our confidence and trusting our assertion and trusting our self-care, that begins to say, okay, this isn't dangerous. This is actually good for me. If I'm more confident, I can be more effective in the world. If I make sure that I'm assertive versus aggressive, I don't get walked over. If I take care of myself, I'm able to bring my best to the caring and taking care of others. So if we kind of find ourselves doing that and feeling good about it and having good responses to it, that begins to rewire the brain. And we can begin to move into the next aspect of our life in a more purposeful way. This is what I teach. I get to go around the world teaching individuals, organizations, how to use my life from the top of the mind system, which is a manual for how to do this, to access this clear, confident, creative part of who we are, the part that we can begin to trust to guide our thoughts and decisions and behavior. If you would like me to come to your organization or work with you and teach you the system, I'll be happy to do that. All you got to do is go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, or just Google Bill Crawford, Ph.D. I'll come up on the first page. Hit the contact button. Let me know what you're interested in. Love to talk with you about that. In the meantime, here's to you bringing more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do by engaging the world in a way that you would recommend to someone you love. Maybe not what we've learned growing up, maybe something we are now choosing in this more purposeful way. More clarity, confidence, and creativity to everything you do. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.